In the quiet recesses of history, myths have always carried with them a trace of truth, a seed buried beneath centuries of retelling. Among the most puzzling of these myths were the recurring tales of beings who seemed out of place, out of time. Ancient scrolls, stone carvings, and oral traditions across the globe described mysterious figures appearing suddenly, clothed in strange garments, bearing tools and knowledge no civilization of their age could possibly have created. They were revered as gods, feared as demons, or dismissed as visions from the heavens. Yet one theme connected them all. They came and vanished without warning, leaving behind a ripple of progress or destruction that altered the course of human destiny. The first recorded whispers came from Sumer, the cradle of civilization. Farmers and priests spoke of tall men in shimmering cloaks, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. They carried discs that spun with endless energy and spoke of cities that floated in the sky. These stories were etched into clay tablets as encounters with the Anunnaki. Historians argued they were symbols of human imagination, but others suggested these visitors were no gods at all, rather, travelers from another time, caught in the fragile web of existence. Across the ocean, in the jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya recorded visions of pale-skinned strangers who appeared during sacred rituals, drawing symbols in the dirt that no one understood, predicting eclipses with precision centuries before they should have been known. And then, like a dream fading with the dawn, they disappeared. Left behind were calendars so advanced they baffled even the most brilliant astronomers of later centuries. The possibility of time travelers explained what historians dismissed as coincidence. Pyramids aligned with stars that could not be seen without advanced knowledge, stones carved with tools that had not been invented, and records of machines described in eras when fire was still considered divine. Could these figures have been humans from our future, slipping into the past by accident or perhaps with purpose? The deeper one looked, the clearer the pattern became. These travelers always appeared in moments of transformation, before the rise of empires, the collapse of cities, the invention of writing, or the forging of weapons that shifted balance forever. They whispered secrets of agriculture, of medicine, and sometimes of war. They left fingerprints too distinct to ignore, hidden in the very myths children once heard around fires. And so, the idea began to grow that myths were not merely stories, but fragmented memories of temporal visitors. If true, then our ancestors were not alone in shaping the destiny of humankind. They had help or interference from those who had already lived the story of tomorrow. But in every story, there is a darker undertone. For just as myths tell of gods of wisdom, they also speak of gods of destruction. Some time travelers may not have come with noble intent. Some may have sought power, rewriting history for themselves. The true cost of their presence remained buried, waiting to be uncovered in the ruins of forgotten cities. And it was in those ruins, deep beneath layers of earth and stone, that one discovery would shake the modern world and prove that these myths were far more than fantasy. The story, however, was only beginning. For the past is never as silent as it seems. Centuries after the myths were first recorded, humanity entered an age of science, determined to peel back the mysteries of the past with evidence rather than belief. Archaeologists dug beneath sands and jungles, uncovering fragments of civilizations that should have been lost forever. Yet among the broken statues and faded inscriptions, they began to notice something they could not explain. In Egypt, hidden beneath the limestone of the Giza Plateau, researchers stumbled upon chambers untouched for thousands of years. Inside, hieroglyphs spoke of beings who walked with the sun but belonged to no age. They were shown wearing strange objects strapped to their wrists and carrying staffs that emitted light brighter than torches. Even more unnerving, one wall depicted what looked like stars connected by lines, the same constellations mapped by modern telescopes, but carved millennia before those tools existed. Half a world away, in Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, the oldest temple known to man, pillars bore carvings that hinted at cosmic knowledge, eclipses, comets, and planetary alignments too advanced for a Stone Age people to know. Among them stood a figure with elongated limbs, holding a circular object that looked eerily similar to a clock. Was this a coincidence, or was it a silent testimony that time itself had once been breached? The discoveries did not stop there. In the Andes, high in the mountains where air thins and life struggles to thrive, explorers found evidence of tunnels carved with surgical precision, impossible with the tools of the time. Locals still whispered that skywalkers had come, bearing devices that could cut stone like butter. Those same visitors, they said, vanished into the horizon, leaving behind only legends. Historians tried to dismiss the findings. They labeled the carvings as symbolic, the myths as exaggerations. But buried documents from the Vatican Library and sealed archives in hidden corners of universities revealed a different narrative, secret records acknowledging encounters with figures who seemed to step in and out of history. Some scribes described them as angels, others as demons, but all agreed they were not ordinary humans of their age. What tied all these appearances together was not just their timing, but their influence. Empires rose after their visits, cities flourished with sudden knowledge, and kings ruled with wisdom or cruelty that seemed to come from nowhere. But as quickly as they appeared, the visitors disappeared, as though bound by rules that even they could not break. Then came the most startling find of all. In the deserts of Mesopotamia, a sealed jar was unearthed, inside of which lay a fragment of what seemed like a mechanism, gears too small, too precise, crafted from a metal unknown to the era. Modern scientists who tested it admitted quietly, in papers that never reached the public eye, that the craftsmanship rivaled modern technology. But how could such an object exist thousands of years before humanity understood machines? Whispers grew louder in secret circles of scholars. Time travelers had walked among us. And if they had visited once, what stopped them from returning again? The discoveries raised a terrifying question. Were these figures benevolent teachers of mankind, or were they architects of fate, shaping civilizations for their own hidden purposes? And soon, one event would surface that gave an even darker meaning to these ancient myths. Because sometimes, history does not hide its truths, it bleeds them into the present. As the whispers of ancient myths clashed with the evidence of modern discovery, a storm was brewing that no one could stop. What began as scattered symbols on stone walls was converging into a single terrifying truth. Humanity was about to learn that myths were never mere stories, they were warnings. It began with an eclipse. In a forgotten village in Central Asia, the sun vanished in the middle of the day, plunging the world into darkness. The villagers trembled, but what they saw next shook the modern world. On the mountain above them, a figure appeared. Witnesses described him as tall, cloaked, and holding an object that glowed with shifting symbols. His presence was fleeting, lasting only moments, but every camera, every phone, every lens turned upward failed to capture him. For the locals, it was the return of the Wanderer, a being written into their ancestors' stories thousands of years ago. For scientists, it was an impossibility. When word of the sighting spread, governments scrambled. Secret intelligence agencies reopened dusty files, filled with centuries of suppressed accounts of visitors who arrived during great upheavals. From the fall of empires to the rise of kingdoms, these figures had been there, silent, observing, sometimes guiding. They never stayed long, as though tethered to laws beyond human comprehension. But one pattern could not be ignored. They appeared during moments when the world teetered between survival and collapse. Historians revisited the myths of dragons, gods, and angels, wondering if they were never symbols at all but garbled memories of real encounters. The flood that destroyed civilizations, the fire that fell from the sky, the men who wielded thunder, were they disasters of nature or manipulations of time? And then came the discovery that sealed the fear. In the frozen tundra of Siberia, an underground chamber was uncovered. Unlike other ruins, this chamber was not carved by hand but engineered with technology centuries ahead of its time. At its center sat a device, half clock, half machine, humming faintly as if still alive. Etched into its surface was an inscription, not in any known language, yet strangely familiar to the human eye. Scholars called it the last warning. When decoded through advanced algorithms, its message sent chills across the world. We came before. We will come again. Time bends not for your will but ours. Beware the turning of the cycle. Suddenly, the myths of ancient time travelers no longer belonged to dusty libraries or broken temples. They were real, and they were watching. Every empire that had ever risen and fallen may not have been the product of human hands alone, but the deliberate shaping of forces beyond comprehension. In the end, humanity was left with a choice: dismiss the warnings as fantasy, or prepare for the inevitable return of those who had always walked beside us in the shadows of history. The time travelers of ancient myths were not gone. They were waiting. And somewhere, perhaps in the corner of a crowded city or the silence of a forgotten ruin, one might already be standing, watching, and writing the next chapter of our story.